So Meghnad, let's now make some bold predictions. You've always been a rebel. So, I guess never in history has any one power dominated civilization and posterity, right? So when you have a big dislocation like COVID, and clearly we saw the countries in the East did a much better job of managing this. What is your prognosis in the next, 10 years, maybe 50 years? How do you see the likes of the US and China, this big sort of trade war that's playing out?
If there is a serious war,
Right.
With whatever it is, US, India, Australia, Japan, or whatever it is, and versus China, then all the bets are off.
Right.
I'll tell you why, because America has never won a land war in Asia, ever, except for the Spanish-American War in, which we got Philippines. They have never won a single war. They lost in Korea, or rather, in Korea. They lost in Vietnam. Now they lost in Afghanistan.
Well, you could argue that post Pearl Harbor, they sort of, with the atomic bomb, won remote control in Japan.
Even that shows that they had won in Europe, but the prognosis at that time was the Japanese would hold out for another year. I mean, I've read a lot about this because Harry Truman is a very fascinating person. And the reason they threw a bomb because they thought we're going to lose thousands more if the Japanese were fighting like that on us. Right. And they didn't learn the lesson, and they lost in Korea because they didn't realize that the Chinese may have been starving, but they were not going to give up. And so I always feel that somehow the probability of that is rising. I don't like it, but that one was changed. Now, it's not that a People's Liberation Army has always won. The Vietnamese had, fought them in 1979 very well. But by and large, I think if that war happens, the land war will be in India.
Right. That's the biggest
thing. The naval war may be in the South Pacific, and America may be able to help through air power. So if that happens, then it's very hard to predict who will win that war. Because basically, I don't consider Japan to be a serious military power. Right? I mean, Australia is too small, population is too small to actually, at one stage when I was in Australia in 1980, the population of Mumbai was larger than the population of Australia.
Yeah, it's still
it's a land. And so, the only live war is India-China. It was the 14,000 square miles or kilometers, whatever it is. And that is difficult to predict. Because, I don't think anybody is going to use nuclear power.
It's mutually assured destruction.
Yeah. And, Mao used to say 200 million people is no problem for us. We will lose. But I think otherwise, I'm not thinking that it will go from America to China, but America may lose it.
Global dominance.
America may lose it.
The economic battle.
Economic battle, because America is about to lose a political battle. America is really going through a very severe crisis. Again, I followed it very, very closely, partly because my real intellectual growth was in America when I was a PhD student there.
Yep.
You see, I think right now, American democratic political system is in a great tension.
Yep.
I was one of the few people. One of the few people who predicted Trump would get elected. In print, I did.
The first round, right?
For first round, right. And I was hedging my bets on the second time as well. But the thing is that if 2/3 of the Republican Party thinks, Trump was cheated, and at the same time the race question is getting more acute, even as conditions are improving for the black people, that battle is going to be very exhausting and destructive for the American economy.
Interesting. Okay.
And people haven't noticed this, and I think let me say this here, that I think the biggest problem right now is the stability of the American political system.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, he won, Trump, even in his loss, won more votes than any other president prior. And black unemployment was actually at its lowest pre-COVID in a Trump regime. But it is quite amazing how vitiated these two sides, the reds and the blues are. And you think that is kind of going to sow the beginning and the end of the American.
Incidentally, I wrote a book called Politics Shock, with Trump, Modi, Brexit.
Okay.
In 2017 it came out. Anyway, there at the end I talk about how America was for a long time a white majoritarian Protestant democracy. Talk about Hindutva, for God's sake, and it lasted for a very long time until Lyndon Johnson passed the Voting Rights Act. I mean, imagine, it was in 1966, I think, 64, I forget. There was an attempt to universal franchise. Right?
In some ways, the East has been far more progressive.
India is very unusual because it's the only democracy the first democracy of its time to be born with universal adult franchise.
Yeah.
It's a very bold decision.
And reading some of your works, you've written that universal franchise has had a profound impact on the left center.
America still doesn't have universal franchise because voting rights are decided at the state level.
Right.
And states like Georgia with the Republican government are even now passing new legislation to make it disenfranchised. And people are surprised when you tell them this because they don't know. They think of American democracy the way it's described on the night of presidential election, and of course Americans went on saying what a great democracy they were. My 4 years in America, I became very aware of the race problem. This is 1960s, and I was demonstrating with a placard.
Right.
I was a very, very small fry, but I became very conscious that there was these two nations, and those two nations are still there. And of course, there are other minorities, Hispanics and all that. But so I'm right now genuinely more worried about American democracy than anybody else is. And my colleagues on the think tank are very shocked when I say this at the webinar.
Right.
But Biden got elected despite 6th of January, and the 6th of January was a big crisis. And 2022 will show us how big an impact Trump will still have on the Republican Party.
Yeah. And you believe that he'll still fight another election?
Well, see, they're trying to make him bankrupt and all that. I don't know whether it'll happen. But the interesting, 2022, whether his wing of the Republican Party,
will reign
whether they will lose massively in the House of Representatives, and the few Senate seats which would be. Now, obviously, if in 2022 the Democrats win both House and the Senate, then the game is over. America is all right, because I don't think they will try in 2024. They will not go with Trump.
Let's take that. So if it's not so much, a head-on battle between the US and China winning, but if it's just the US sort of becoming weaker because of its own internal issues, then de facto, then the natural person, especially with Xi Jinping's sort of Belt and Road Initiative and much more, earlier China used to bide low and sort of think about internal stability. Now it's about external influence. So do you think that will be the new world order, where China will become because they own Africa, they own South America, they own large parts of Southeast Asia.
Owning those guys who won't pay any debt anyway. That is not a recoverable debt. Right. The Chinese may think that they're going to get money out of Africa. They're joking. I remember a few years ago, I was in Guyana. A man called Cherry Jagan had returned as Prime Minister. He was a very charismatic person. So he got back, so they said, will you come to Guyana? So I went to Guyana. And at that time, there was a debt problem. And Jagan was saying, we need a new deal and all that. I said, not new deal, Marshall Plan, I said, no, Marshall Plan is not going to happen. The finance minister was a younger chap. He said, I'm not going to pay debt back. I don't see any reason why I should pay back. Right. I will force them to do the worst they can before I pay a single penny.
Right, yeah, because it's not like you can go after the collateral
it is sovereign countries. Yeah. You can't do anything in a sovereign country. So I think Chinese have yet to learn, I mean, you can't, they may be able to conquer Central Asia, but they're not going to conquer Africa. No, I think the whole belt and whatever it is, road initiative is complete nonsense because they have dumped a lot of their surplus steel on unwilling countries and paid them to take it away. And they actually think, see, this is not the way Western imperialism worked. They didn't spend a single penny of them, and that's what the Chinese haven't learned. Now, I think one very interesting thing about China, which many people have not noticed, is finally they abandoned the one-child policy.
Oh, I think everyone has noticed. I think it's gone the other way, right? Now you have incentives to have two children.
Chinese government may not grow up, but growing up. And there's something else called, people are marrying late, and the government, the party is very upset that people are exercising choice in domestic small matters. And that's, I think, what a Communist Party government would find very difficult to adjust to.
But I could argue that if there is no other political system in the world, and you kind of having your Marxist lineage, where this is a command and control headquarter, but with a hyper-capitalist interior. So the only country that has the vision that, look, we did one-child policy when population was going unhinged, and now that the demographics have become old and we're sort of losing productivity and the war with India, let's have tax incentives. Only China can make that kind of policy and have people follow it, right? Nowhere else in the world would that even be conceivable.
But China is unique. It's the only country which read Marx properly. Because, seriously, I've written, sorry, I can't cover my books. I wrote a book called Marx's Revenge. Right. The resurgence of capitalism and the death of statist socialism is really about Marx's revenge on Lenin. I didn't, Lenin got it completely wrong. Right? Because he thought that it was the production system of capitalism which was the problem. Right. The Chinese said that's, forget it. Capitalism is good, and it's political control which is a problem. Right. So we will combine, real capitalism with control. Yeah. So at least in a more technologically oriented capitalism, we control higher education, we control investment in cybernetics, whatever it is. The Russians made a total hash of it, because they had a good military-industrial machine, but not good enough to beat the Americans. Yeah. And they had no consumption goods. So China, you see, China's failure is not going to be in economics. It's the only Communist Party in the world which got the economics right.
But on that, we have, several conversations on an ongoing basis with the NDRC, with the PBOC, with some of the big lawmaking bodies in China. And under closed doors, they would tell you that, look, we don't think that the current political system in China is sustainable, because the calculus has been that you will sacrifice some of your liberties and we will ensure that your standard of living keeps going up. But after you get to a certain level of income, and with the proliferation of information with social media, it's actually very hard to have people behind the Iron Curtain. And so they are talking about experimenting with a Singaporean style of politics where you have a guise of democracy, but you have one party in power for a long time.
I've been surprised about that, because I went to China in 1973. So I haven't been thinking about it. And this book, Marx's Revenge, was translated in Chinese. Okay. They commissioned, they've read it. Because I basically was saying, Marx didn't say any of the nonsense that Lenin said about going beyond capitalism and all that rubbish. He had an immense belief in the productive powers of capitalism, innovative powers, dynamics of, and he said that capitalism will not go away until its productive capacity dries up, its innovative capacity dries up.
Right. Which is
there's nothing about workers rising and all this, all rubbish. These people invented, and the Chinese learned that. As I said, read the Communist Manifesto. It's the best praise of capitalism and anyone in the world.
Right.
And so, basically, Deng Xiaoping, my view is Deng Xiaoping looked at Taiwan and said, if these miserable people can prosper, why can't we? Of course, Singapore had done that, Hong Kong had done that. He said, listen, the Chinese can be prosperous, we don't have to be miserable like this. And so he changed the belief of a lifetime. I think he the man of the 20th century is Deng Xiaoping, most revolutionary thinker, who said, I don't need this rubbish. We've been sort of dying and killing each other all these years because of Mao's madness. If the Singaporeans can do it, we can do it. And it was just like, that's where I think command and control helped.
Yep.
There's no arguments about priorities in planning or anything like that.
So, I think you're right on the money in terms of how they've been able to sustain themselves so far, and and a lot of the skeptical people have sort of fallen by the wayside. Lots of hedge funds have been shorting China. Lots of people have said that just like the Soviet Union, it would implode. But from here on, do you think that it is sustainable in its current form?
Well, I would say if the war doesn't happen,
right,
for 20, 25 years, China is all right.
Right, yeah.
Even if America has political stability problems, its prosperity will not change all that much.
Yeah, they've got a lot of assets.
Exactly. After look at the UK, it's been politically declining for God knows how many years.
Right.
All post-war period, it's still quite a prosperous place. With good things like university sector, research and development, very, very good.
Yeah.
So I think people somehow have got used to what I call the Bastille Day problem, i.e. sudden change.
Right.
Nothing happened in Bastille Day. In one day, or the Russians saying, "Oh, the Winter Palace was stormed," and the Russian it didn't take place like that. So I don't think things. It's like a stock market collapse. It's not like that. Change will actually, in another way, China may become the best combination of a efficient economy, very much given to lacking knowledge, investing in knowledge, and a bit of political relaxation, and you're home.
Yeah.
Yugoslavia was a much interesting communist economy. People have forgotten about Yugoslavia. They had workers' ownership and a very mild kind of political regime. I mean, it happened that they ended up not liking each other sort of ethnically and killed each other. But it was possible. I mean, I would say, think of Iran. Basically what Iran does is the Ayatollahs determine who's going to get a ticket to run, the top positions. The rest can have democracy.
Right.
But the Ayatollah controls who's going to be the president and who's going to be the cabinet. Now, it would be very easy for the Chinese Communist Party to do that. I mean, let them talk, what's going on. You control the... So I think, and Xi Jinping is still trying to restore 1840 or whatever it is. But whenever I have gone and talked to people, they're fantastically intelligent people. They're very well informed, very, very well informed. And we have Chinese students coming to LSE and elsewhere. They're very, very bright.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I think, again, compared to, say, India, there is a certain homogeneity.
In China versus India, which makes it much easier to marshal those resources.
Even without a Communist Party, there would be some basic agreement on where the country should go.
Right.
which India doesn't have.
Down the free Auro mobile application now.